Hi everyone. I wanted to discuss the discussion questions that were posed to us regarding critical race theory. So the first question is related to the racial identity development theory that was discussed in Module 2. I really enjoyed those theories. I found them very insightful and regarding my personal identity. I'm mixed race, African American, and white. And I was, really surprised and interested to see that biracial identity was discussed. I find that, I think that's very important because there are growing numbers of multiracial individuals in the US. And I think I heard it's like 1/6 of the population, something like that, in major cities. So I was really impressed to see that. And I also found it interesting how they said that biracial individuals often relate the most to other individuals who are mixed, um, even of different backgrounds. Just the experience of being mixed is something that can connect people because I think that is true for me, and I have a lot of friends who are mixed race of different, varying ancestries. So I thought that was a really cool point. And yeah, I just think it's very important for us as social workers to know and understand all the different racial identities that are out there, and to really understand how race influences an individual as they grow and develop. So yeah, so what informed your racial identity development? So for me, I was very influenced by my extended family. Um, I am African American and white, like I mentioned, and I'm from Tennessee. My family's from Mississippi, so I'm sure you can imagine how interesting that must be. And um, my extended family, as well as my immediate family, my mom and dad were always very liberal. My immediate peer group, were another influence. Friends, of course, and probably also literature. I read a lot as a teenager and as a young adult, and I think it informed my value system. Values like social justice and things like that when I was younger. So um, yeah, so a lot of influence, I would say, and over the years, and it's still something. I think identity is something that's always kind of evolving, even if we have like settled, and we're not in a stage. We're kind of still always developing. Um, so, what is the role of race on framing your identity? And then, when did you become aware of your racial self? So, I I have always been aware of my racial self, or at least from a very young age. I've been aware of it. I Like I said, I'm African American and white mixed race, and my mother's family did not approve of her marriage to my father. So we didn't get to see our grandparents when we were little, and until they reconciled later as we got older. And so we're always very aware of it, even as little kids. Like we knew our sort of our racial identity. Uh, so yeah, so describe a time in which you experienced or witnessed institutional racism, and how is it influential in your becoming aware? So, uh, so when I was in high school, like in early high school, we went on our usual yearly family trip. My mom, my dad, my brother, and I to Rockford, Illinois, where my uncle lived at the time, and this trip, we stopped at a restaurant, like off the interstate or whatever, and we went into this restaurant, and we all sat down, and we sat down in a booth, and we waited for quite a long time to be served, and we were never served. The wait staff kind of walked by us without serving us, and we were there for a really long time, and they definitely saw us. And then my brother and I, or at least I, was a chatty kid, and I was like, "Hey, do you see us?" And they definitely saw us. So we were not served for that event, and of course, we were very upset about that. Like my dad, especially, was very vocal about what happened, and I think, and my mom as well was very upset. She felt very like protective of myself and my brother, and yeah, it was uh, an unfortunate event. And then I think also I was around 12 or 13, I think, maybe a little older than that, like 13, 14. And I think I was a really idealistic kid. Like I said, I used to read a lot of literature, and social justice. And so I was like, I was like, okay, so this is what's going to happen. I was like, we're just gonna like take this up there. We're gonna tell the manager what happened. Like I was just like convinced that something was gonna happen, and that this just couldn't happen in today's society. And I think that was kind of a naive thing to say. Of course, we're in another city. Like, how we're gonna, do all that, and it was just something that ended up kind of upsetting the family, and not not something that we felt we could really do anything about. So yeah, let's see. As far as which stage, so that's the identity versus role confusion, which I guess I just talked a little bit about that. And I think also it was like during high school. And so during high school, my brother and I went to different high schools actually. The high school that he went to, uh, Wooddale, is the one that's like kind of close to our house, like the neighborhood that we lived in. And it was uh, it was a very different environment. They didn't have, so his school was probably 100% African American, or close to 100% African American, and it was also they didn't have as good, the resources were not as good at his school. And then my school, I went to the academic magnet, and which a much higher white population, a much larger white population, and it was like a very different experience, for me. And like it had amazing resources and like great classes and things like that. So I think I was able to see how White Station had such great resources. White Station, the school I went to, had really great resources, and that wasn't necessarily true in every school. And so I was just beginning to think about those issues, and to be aware of how they affected me and my family and my life. I think that experience was definitely like a sort of a turning point for me, or at least that kind of helped me become more of a an outspoken, sort of vocal, like social critic, I guess. And so let's see. Um, okay, so with the critical race theory, describe one action that you can take to challenge power structures, and also how do you think you would respond to that situation now? Of course, with that situation that I discussed about at the restaurant, I think that I would certainly try to address that either at the corporate level or at the manager level, because that's kind of like, I don't know, uh, that's part of advocacy, and I think I would have a very different reaction to it now. I think it's also, nowadays it's kind of easier to get, like someone might get in a lot of trouble for that. This was like in the 90s, and I think the racial climate was a bit different even then. And I think something like that's a little bit less likely to occur, and I also think it's somebody would do something about it if it happened. So, uh, Yeah, so and then as social workers, I think it's very important for us to look at ways we can address this on the social level, not just the social level, but the systems level, and how we can advocate for our clients who are experiencing racial injustice, no matter what it may look like, economic injustice, or you know, the readings discuss some of the issues within the welfare system and how it affects individuals differently. So I think it's a really important part of macro advocacy to address those issues. So, all right, thank you.